Just add that if you look at the EPA's website on what it does with climate change, it never just works or looks at climate change alone. It's always climate change and adaptation. And in fact, our office is working with 7 communities in Iowa with FEMA regarding the flooding in 2007, both for redesign of the community strategies mated with adaptation principles. And because adaptation is specific to localized areas, because obviously climate is specific to certain areas, you can find a list of things that we're working on in Iowa alone on adaptation. I know there's also been a lot of work in New Orleans and other areas around the Gulf that have also looked at adaptability on a variety of methods, from everything from floating homes comes to mind and other issues. And then just looking at those 2 questions up there, that is typically not the way it happens. Most smart growth comes from the market, either from the ground up, from people who want it, or from developers or retailers who ultimately read the market and understand that is has marketability. I don't know anywhere where it's top down, except in Wisconsin. I think they have a Smart Growth Act, which requires everyone to do land planning, but that is not necessarily on the ground smart growth planning, and that really relates to the top question right there. I don't necessarily think that there is a high cost of green. It depends how you define green, what the techniques are, what the innovations are. There's a website called Original Green where they talk about having crawl space and recessed windows and an attic, all sorts of things, and trees, all sorts of things which are very low cost and do wonders to create low energy costs for people. So I would actually disagree with that last question about that being a high cost to green.
I know Mr. Cheatham wants to weigh in real quick.
Okay. Yeah, just a quick add-on to that in terms of Federal Highways is currently doing we call it Gulf Coast Study 2, that's looking at climate change adaptation. And in fact, this is whether you need to move a roadway in or out or whatever in all these facilities, and we're targeting it along the Gulf Coast because that's where the major flooding at the time was there. For example, if you also take the coast and go around to North Carolina, we just went through it, talking about whether the bridge needs to be replaced or does it need to be moved, in fact, further away from the coast and the community efforts because of what might happen to climate change. And we're working with the National Weather Service and a number of the agencies in terms of doing this. Gulf Coast Study 1 was kind of identified the areas, and 2 now is looking at a pinpoint example of how do we pull this together, what does it mean to a community. Obviously, when you move major transportation facilities or buildings and whatever, it's going to be a huge cost. But what does this really make? And then we're looking at internally, I think someone mentioned Iowa and those types of things. They also have those issues also, so in terms of that in California. So stay tuned. Gulf Coast Study 2 is probably just getting really underway. Hopefully that will, I think is within a year or so, we'll publish that particular report. The first one got a lot of attention.
Great. Thank you. We'll do this final livability principle. Have probably time for one question before we close up, and there will be an opportunity to speak with the federal agencies representatives after our conference, so please, we encourage you to stick around.
Enhancing the unique characteristics of a community helps to refresh neighborhood vitality. The precedent scenarios that we selected to show for this livability principle are located in Greenville, South Carolina, Davidson, North Carolina, Palmyra, New Jersey, and Chattanooga, Tennessee. From the mid-1800s until the 1920s, Greenville, South Carolina was known as the textile center of the South. The industry was successful due to the Reedy River, which ran through downtown and supplied a power source to the mills and factories. However, in the late 1920s, textile mill strikes and the Great Depression affected Greenville just as they did the rest of the country. Construction came to a halt for several years, and it was not until after World War II that the economy in Greenville improved. Unfortunately, as the suburbs of Greenville showed great increase in both housing and businesses, the heart of the city suffered an extreme decline. Finally, in the 1970s, people began to talk about revitalizing downtown Greenville. The first effort to refresh the area was Heritage Green, a cultural complex made up of a theater, a library, an art museum, and an orchestra hall. Shortly following the opening of Heritage Green, a Hyatt Regency Hotel was constructed and began to bring tourism back to Greenville. After that, revitalization efforts increased tenfold. Burnt-out ruins of mills and factories were cleared away, and the new Falls Park on the Reedy was established. The park now features over 10 miles of bike paths and trails, a state-of-the-art pedestrian suspension bridge, an amphitheater, multiple gardens, and sculptures by local artists. The historic buildings lining Main Street have been restored, trees have been planted, and street-side cafes and boutiques have helped create a thriving pedestrian environment. The new downtown generates an incredible amount of tourism and revenue for Greenville and is consistently ranked as one of the best small city centers in the U.S. In Greenville, South Carolina, 60% of all downtown commercial buildings must be rented or owned by local business owners. The 2009 revenue from retail totaled $82.2 million. Downtown Greenville also features over 80 restaurants, most of them local non-chain establishments. To increase cultural diversity, funding from the city is available for people trying to start a restaurant that offers a new type of ethnic cuisine. $69.3 million was generated from these restaurants in the past year.
In an effort to promote physical activity and battle the rising trend of childhood obesity, the City of Davidson, North Carolina instituted a program to encourage parents and children to walk to school. On the last Wednesday of the month, parents and teachers escort children from the local elementary schools as they walk from various meeting points throughout the city. Parents may choose to walk or drive their children to the rendezvous points, and school buses make an extra stop on walking days to drop children off to join the escorts. Participation has been so great that local law enforcement recently began training community volunteers as crossing guards in order to increase the number of walking routes. Many parents and children participate rain or shine, and the elementary program was so successful in its first year that 3 more schools in the city have joined the initiative.
The Palmyra Shade Tree Commission maintains the municipal trees in the town of Palmyra, New Jersey, which mainly consist of the trees that line the streets between the curb and sidewalk in residential areas. Because homes in the Northeast typically sit closer to the street, residents do benefit from these trees. Homeowners may not cut or trim these trees, but may request maintenance or ask for older shade trees to be replaced if they are cause for hazard. One study showed that in the Northeast, mature trees properly placed around buildings can reduce air conditioning needs by up to 30% and heating needs by up to 20%. Another study showed that planting 1 young tree on the west side of your home can cut energy costs by 3% within 5 years and nearly 12% within 15 years. The Palmyra shade trees save homeowners energy, improve the value of homes, and add to the beauty of the community.
An important part of Chattanooga's revitalization has been the restoration of the city's waterfront. Cut off from the city by roadways and industry, the river was a forgotten part of the fabric of downtown. In the early 1980s, a small but dedicated group of residents and business owners came together with the goal of reconnecting the city to the river. Rallying the support of city planners and private citizens, the group formed a task force and proposed a strategic master plan. With support from the State Transportation Board, the city was permitted to demolish a section of the roadway between the river and downtown. Public and private funding supported the development of a series of interconnected parks and trails, which now run along a 22-mile stretch of the Tennessee River. Neighborhoods once disconnected from the city are now linked, and the Tennessee River Park has won numerous national awards for walking, biking, and recreation.